Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. My name is Mark Towler, and I'm going to be your webinar host for today. So I'll be handling all of your questions and answers during this presentation. I have enabled the questions panel, which you should see on the right-hand side of your screen, and you may need to expand that panel by pushing the little plus sign or the up or down arrow. This session is being recorded, and we will be making it available to all attendees if you want to listen to it again or share it with your colleagues. But today, what we're going to be doing is doing nothing really but questions. We're going to be holding an Ask Me Anything session with the celebrated WUG Ninja, Jason Alberino. Jason has been with Ipswich and Progress and has been using WhatsUp Gold for literal decade or more, I think, at this point, and has forgotten more about this product than any of us will ever know. This is the kind of guy if you ask a question in the community, he'll usually respond with a script that solves your problem. So we've been collecting pieces of information that you guys have been submitting and questions, and we're all going to walk it through Jason, who will answer them piece by piece. If any other ones come up, as I said, throw them into that question manager and we'll throw them in as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass things on to Jason. Jason, if you want to say hi and introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. So I'll go ahead and get sharing my screen. So just a little bit about me for the people who don't know. I was actually a customer of WhatsUp Gold for nearly a decade, and I've been with Ipswich, now Progress, since 2013. So I have roughly 18, 19 years experience with WhatsUp Gold. I did consulting for a long time, so I worked in many different customer environments. I also did pre-sales. So now I'm on the product management end, actually. So been a long journey for me in the WhatsUp Gold realm. So I think that covers it. So let's go ahead and get into
Let's
the questions.
dive right in. So one of the questions we got is, what are the recommended monitors you should always configure for network equipment?
So a lot of the time when this comes up with consulting clients, I would always tell them, well, to use what's directly out of the box. And directly out of the box is fan, power supply, temperature sensors, interface active monitors, and then CPU interface utilization, as well as ping latency and availability. Now, that doesn't mean that's a one-size-fits-all solution, but that's where you start. So there might be other critical components that you want to monitor within the network. The trick being here, only monitor things that are critical to the device. So for example, maybe I don't care about these ports and they got enabled by default. Just disable them. Then you don't get bothered by them. You don't get woken up in the middle of the night from something that doesn't really need your attention. So focus on monitoring the things that if there is some sort of outage, it really needs your attention right away.
Excellent. And how do I use WhatsUp Gold to properly monitor traffic flow per switch port?
So that actually, once again, happens directly out of the box. So if I go to my analyze performance and then, analyze network and then interface utilization or interface traffic, depending on what aspect I want to look at, you'll see that, well, there's a full page report and you can look at all of the information you're collecting or point at a specific device, certain time period, etc. Now, the thing that trips up a lot of people is if you're looking at a group here, you're not going to see a chart over time. So people always ask, well, how do I get to that chart? The catch is, well, you have to just be viewing a single device. So I can click this device and say filter by this. And then once it loads the filter, it will display, information over time here. Now, this is just part of the base package with WhatsUp Gold. Keep in mind, WhatsUp Gold has the core package itself and then add-ons. So if you have the traffic analysis add-on, you get a little bit more information about this. So built into WhatsUp Gold with this interface utilization monitoring, you're able to see, transmit and receive values, so to speak. So it's just going to give you totals, how much traffic. Whereas the traffic analysis is actually going to tell you what that traffic specifically is. So how most people use it is they will use it as a point in time troubleshooting tool, so to speak. So if someone says, oh, the network's going slow, you have the data here that you can come and see, oh, well, why is it slow? What is consuming the bandwidth? So you see it goes down to the individual endpoint to see how much traffic's being passed to or from that specific IP address, for example. So there's a lot of different options when it comes to traffic flow. Back to the original answer, that is, well, it's built in out of the box. So you see interface utilization, interface traffic. If you need additional detail beyond that, that's where the traffic analysis add-on comes. And Flowmon we'll talk about some other time.
That's right. We're in the process of adapting a recent acquisition called Flowmon that has some advanced traffic analysis capabilities. And the one thing I want to mention as well, Jason, you were pointing out that WhatsUp Gold's available as a base or premium solution with available add-ons. There's also a Total Plus package that includes all of the add-ons, so you don't have to worry about licensing or think about them. But it's just good to be clear.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Next question, and this is kind of a two-parter. How do I add new monitors for Azure devices, and how do I monitor Azure and other cloud services?
Okay, so this is a good one. I actually have to switch over environments here. So when it comes to Azure, creating a new monitor is actually pretty easy. So in your monitors library, you just say new performance monitor, and then you'll see Azure Performance Monitor right here. While we're at it, you see AWS CloudWatch, and basically any values that those two APIs populate, you're able to pull back into WhatsUp Gold. So for the example of Azure, we'll just select this. Then my summary, I hit edit, and I tell it which credential to use, and okay. Then it's going to connect to that subscription. Then you get to pick, well, where is the specific resource you're looking for? So I'm going to just choose a resource group. We'll say, I don't know, my Key Vault, but you see it populates all of these different resource types. And then specific resource, you also have the option to say use the device context. So if you're monitoring a specific Azure resource, you can say, well, use the context of the device in order to get the information. In my case, I'm just going to point out a specific resource, and then you see all of the available metrics. You could pick any of them. So I'll say overall vault availability, for example. And then it's as simple as, well, you just save that, give it a name, whatever, and then you assign that monitor to a device and its track going forward. Now, the other part to that question was, well, how do I actually get the Azure monitoring going? And that goes back to WhatsUp Gold's agentless, right? So we need to tell it how to communicate with either AWS, Azure, et cetera, or any cloud service. And that's where our credentials come in. So you'll see in my credential library, I have my Azure credential added. That's how I'm able to then discover Azure. Same thing with AWS. So once you have your credential, and there are good KB articles out on our site on how to actually achieve this, which I would highly encourage you to go take a peek at. But once you have your credential, add it. It's as simple as saying, okay, I want to do a new scan, and then you tell AWS, Azure. If you're doing AWS, you get to select the regions, where with Azure, you have to scan everything, basically. So I think that beats that question up pretty good.
Very comprehensive, Jason. Next one, let's move on. What's the best, oh, this is an open-ended one. What's the best way to set up custom monitors and email alerts?
So the answer there really is it depends, right? Certain things are going to be more critical than others. What I usually recommended to consulting clients was, start with what comes out of the box and then keep adding on from there. So a good example of that is with, let's say, Windows servers, right? So with Windows servers, directly out of the box, we look at CPU, disk, memory utilization, and then we ping the device. More than likely, you're going to want to look at more than that. That's where our active monitors come in. And you'll see quite literally dozens of different types here. So quite literally anything you can think of can be monitored. The catch is you might need to tell WhatsUp Gold, how to monitor that thing, but we make it very easy for you. So for example, Windows servers, I could say, well, I want to monitor some services on there. And then it's as simple as telling it which protocol to use and then browsing to that specific device. Let's see if I have one handy. Nothing in my quick browse list. Let's see if I could find one. This one should work. And you see I browsed to that device. It automatically pulled in that credential that I have assigned to that device, and that populates all of the services. In addition, a little hidden trick here is most columns in WhatsUp Gold will have this little drop down on, and you can actually filter for something specific. So maybe I just want to see, SQL related things, and you see that filter applies and makes it a little bit easier. So for this example, let's say I want it to do my SQL Server service itself. I just give it a name, and save it. Now, what's really nice, oh, I already have one in the library with that name. Let me save it. Okay. So what's really nice about that is this can apply to any SQL server. So it's not limited to that one I just pointed out. The catch being, as long as that service name is the same, I could then associate it to multiple different systems. And that's really the kind of way of custom monitors in general is if you identify that something's critical to be monitored, just come look at your monitors library and you'll see that there are many, many, many possibilities. So I pointed out like the service monitor, but you can look at any WMI value, any snmp value, check if ports are up. The certificate monitor, which I still think is probably one of the most important monitors. It's the most common issue we see with big corporations when they have an outage. Oh, the certificate expired. Well, you can monitor that and get notified when it's expiring, etc. So long-winded answer is it really depends on your situation when it comes to custom monitoring. Now, when it comes to email alerts, you once again have a lot of different options, and it's going to once again depend on your situation. So the thing I want to point out with email alerts is most people end up using what's directly out of the box here. So if I make a new email action and I go to the mail content tab, you'll see we have some default values in here. What's really nice is you can right click in here and you'll see all of the different variables that are available to you. And these variables populate based on whichever device is sending the alert. So just keep in mind that you have a lot of customizability when it comes to your email alerts. In fact, you can put whatever you want in here. I've seen people not even rely on what's any of these variables and make specific alerts for certain situations. So you quite literally can put any plain text or HTML email in the message body or subject line. So quite limitless customizability, so to speak. Now, before we get off that topic of email alerts, I also want to mention you're not limited to email alerting. There are a lot of different actions you could do, including corrective type ones. So for example, maybe that service I was talking about earlier stopped. You could automatically start it again. All right, next question, Mark.
Well, actually, the next one is somewhat related, I believe. We got someone who said they're unable to get email notifications to work accurately. And do you have any tips or pointers on that?
So the most common issues I see with alerting, one is, well, you have to apply the action policy. So when you start monitoring devices in WhatsUp Gold, by default, it's not going to do any action. So in device properties here, if I go to my actions tab, you have the option of either assigning a policy you've created or created a policy for this specific device. So if I wanted this to, alert me, I can apply whichever specific action policy includes that. And once I apply the policy, you'll see it will tell me what it's going to do at each of the following state changes. So this is, when it goes down, it's going to email HTML using a custom PowerShell that I made. There's many, many possibilities here, once again, but the takeaway is you have to apply your action policy. So what I'm doing here is at the device level. So that means any active monitor on this device is probably a bad example. Let's pull up a different device. This device has tons of monitors, right? So I don't have to go and say apply an action or action policy to each individual monitor, although I do want to point out that is possible. Certain situations might call for that specific thing. But in general, you'll be applying your action or action policy to the device. So when you apply it to the device, that means any monitor that were to change state and meet the criteria from your action policy could trigger that action policy. So you don't have to pick and choose, which monitors alert, so to speak. Now, keeping that in mind, another common thing I see is people alerting immediately when something is down. And I actually recommend against that. So the reason why is you have to keep in mind the defaults in WhatsUp Gold. So the default polling interval for all these active monitors in WhatsUp Gold is every 60 seconds, as you see there. You can adjust that to be either less or more as a side note. However, our state changes typically tie back to some sort of time period. So for example, we have down, then down 2 minutes, and down 5 minutes directly out of the box. If you email immediately when something is down, Well, that means that it was just one failure, so to speak. So what we see sometimes is false positive situations because maybe the timeout retry values are too aggressive for your environment for certain monitors. So a good catch is, well, if you wait until down at least 2 minutes to send your first alert, then you know at least it failed 2 polling cycles. So really you want to be careful to not email yourself when you don't have to. In combination with that, each of the monitors, and I see a common one that happens is like the ping monitor, for example. Someone will say, oh, well, I got an alert that my ping monitor went down, but wasn't actually down. What happens is, well, the default values here are 1 second with 1 retry. So think about it in the 60-second context. Every 60 seconds, we're going to ping that device, and we're given it 2 seconds to respond. If it drops those packets, which, in larger networks, it's not uncommon for a couple packets to be dropped here and there, that monitor would be labeled down until the next polling cycle when it would try again. So simply by adjusting these timeout retry values, you can be more sure, more confident in the alerts you're getting. So if in the same scenario, instead of waiting, 2 seconds, I would be waiting 24 seconds. So it's a lot more significant, right? You might expect a packet to drop for 1 to 3 seconds potentially, but 24 seconds straight is certainly an issue you would want to know about. So really, you have to just play with it. Yeah, every environment's going to be slightly different. In general, what I recommend is if you get an email alert that you either think is a false positive or feel like it's not important, make sure to go investigate it. If it is a false positive, adjusting those timeout retry values. If it's something you don't care about, go disable that monitor. That example I gave earlier, maybe there's some interfaces you really don't care about, like user ports, things along those lines. Well, you would just go disable those, and then you'll never get alerted by those specific things. So hopefully that's enough tips and pointers there.
That was really comprehensive. In fact, actually, I'm looking at another question we've got here that may be somewhat related, and I just want to make sure that we answered it along with everything else. Someone's saying sometimes we get a false alert with the HTTPS active monitor. How can we reduce that false alert with the HTTP content monitor? I don't see an option that says if it fails a number of polls, then it considers it down. Is that kind of related to the whole
Yes.
what you're just talking about? I know this
Yes,
is more
exactly.
specific.
So with I think I have some, they're talking about these monitors here. So these specific monitors you see have a 5-second timeout, which sometimes is just not enough. It's really just a matter of adjusting that timeout to meet criteria, right? For example, maybe the site doesn't load within 5 seconds, and maybe that's expected. If it is expected, increase this value. But make sure to keep it within the tolerance of whatever system you're monitoring, so to speak. So if you normally expect it to be up and loaded within 10 seconds, keep it there. If you're okay with it waiting at least 30 seconds, keep moving it up as need be. But the best way to avoid false positives is by increasing these timeout retry values. Typically, they're just too aggressive for some environments. So it's a matter of just changing these numbers. And this is a global change, is something to keep in mind. So I'm in my monitors library, which means any device that has this monitor associated with it would respect that new timeout. So you might run into situations where, well, a certain device needs a higher timeout, but other devices are okay with that lesser timeout. You could always make a copy of that monitor and then assign it to that device. So I could have one, longer timeout, call it whatever you'd like, and have two of the same monitor, just, associate the one you want to the device that needs that longer timeout. All right.
Thank you.
Next question.
That was good. This one might be simple. Can you monitor clustered shared volumes?
Clustered shared volumes. I would need a little bit more information. Are we talking about like a Microsoft cluster and the shared volumes between them?
I think this one came in while you were talking about the Azure items, but let's request a bit more detail from the questioner who is online now, and I'll move on to another question in the meantime.
Okay.
How do I configure interface bandwidth monitors and measurement alerts? Is the software able to be used as a network analyzer tool?
So we partially touched on that earlier. Remember I mentioned
Mhm.
there we have the interface utilization reports and we also have the traffic analysis. In both situations, you have the ability to alert on those, and that's controlled in what we call Alert Center. So under Settings, Actions, and Alerts, and then Alert Center Libraries, that's where you start making those thresholds to tell what's up gold. Well, what do you want to be alerted about? And you see we have some in here by default, but you could also create your own. So just a quick example, let's say we'll go with one that's already built in. So you see I have my network traffic analysis, traffic exceeds 90%. And these are very highly configurable. So for example, I could say, well, incoming or outgoing or one or the other, and I don't have to say it exceeds a percentage. I could also point out a traffic amount, etc., and then over a period of time. So you quite literally define, well, when do you want to be alerted about this thing? So what's up gold's already collecting that data. The next step is telling it when you want to be alerted, because once again, every environment's different, right? So the one thing I'll point out is on the NTA thresholds, you have the ability to point at specific interfaces, whereas on the kind of base interface utilization monitor within What's Up Gold, you have the ability to point at devices. So I can either point at a group of devices or exclude specific devices, but I can't point at certain interfaces within that device. So that's an important note there, is to keep that in mind. The traffic analysis has the ability to target an interface or specific interfaces, whereas the interface utilization threshold here can only target devices themselves.
Excellent. This is a bit of a palate cleanser. How do I send plain text email alerts instead of HTML emails? I have searched high and low and can't figure it out.
So that we're actually in the right place for that. So within Alert Center, you actually only have the ability to send HTML emails. However, when we're in the actions and policies we were looking at earlier, you have the option of selecting either plain text or HTML. So I'll just pull up an email action here. And you'll see there's a check, a radio button here, plain text or HTML.
Nice, simple one. How do I add
like
custom? That. Yeah, I was gonna say, it's always nice when there's an easy answer. How do I add custom snmp monitors to a specific OID?
I like this one. So back to our monitors library, settings, libraries, then monitors. Now, depending on if you're looking for something availability wise or a performance statistic, you would choose either active monitor or performance monitor. Let's assume it's something for availability. Then it's as simple as using the snmp monitor. So using this snmp monitor, I can point at any object ID as well as any instance and then define, what is the criteria for up versus down. So it doesn't matter what snmp value it is, I'm able to go and create a monitor for it. Now, what's helpful when doing this, especially if you're unfamiliar with the snmp tree of whatever device you're encountering, we have a MIB walker tool built right into the web interface. So under Analyze Tools, and then snmp MIB walker here, I can point this at a device, I tell it which object ID, and then I tell it which credential, and then I hit walk, and it's going to show me all of those values. For those unfamiliar, this is what they call get next in snmp. So I'm giving it this value and I'm saying, show me the value after that. And it says, oh, the value after that is this one. What's after that? That's this one. What's after that? And it just keeps running that get next over and over again until it populates them all. You'll notice if you have the snmp MIB loaded for the device, you'll have translations here. If you see a bunch of random string of numbers, so to speak, that means, well, you don't have the MIB loaded quite yet. Loading that MIB to What's Up Gold is important when creating those custom monitors because it really simplifies the process because you're able to browse to it and point to it instead of kind of guessing and checking, so to speak. So while we're on that subject, I'll point out you can load MIBs in a couple different ways to What's Up Gold. So with the search here, I forget what it's called off the top of my head, MIB File Explorer, there we go, and the MIB Manager. So the MIB Manager, the MIB File Explorer lets you look at which ones you already have loaded, whereas the MIB Manager lets you actually upload MIBs too. So in the MIB Manager, it might take a little while to load here. You see this little plus sign, I could go and add whatever MIB I want to the library. In addition to that, let's say you had, I don't know, hundreds of MIBs. Maybe you got a zip file with a ton of MIBs from the vendor. You don't have to upload those one by one. You can go directly to the server and then just drop them in the correct directory. which is under the installation directory, data, and then MIBs.
Thank you, Jason. Another fairly simple one here, I think. For network interface monitoring, how far back historically can the system record?
So that's actually configurable. So under settings, system settings, and then general settings here, you have different retention values for performance monitors, passive monitors, as well as active monitors. So when we're talking about historic interface monitor, I'm guessing we're talking about utilization. You'll see the defaults are in here. So raw data is kept for 12 hours. It rolls up to hourly data after that, and we keep that hourly data for 2 days, and then goes into daily data, and we keep that daily data for 60 days. However, you can adjust these to whatever you'd like. There's no limitations except on the raw data. There is a maximum on the raw data of 14 days, 23 hours. Keep in mind when playing with these values, the higher they are, the more storage space you are going to use in your database. As long as you have the storage space to handle it, you're able to increase these to whatever it needs to be. Most customers obviously keep data for at least a year. I've seen a handful say, oh, well, I'm fine with the defaults. It really depends on your scenario once again. If you ever find yourself in the situation where you have to go back and look for data that's not there, you absolutely want to look into increasing these retention settings.
Thank you, Jason. We did get some clarity on that monitoring clustered shared volumes question earlier. The questioner added, yes, for Hyper-V clusters or SQL clusters, they are a redirected volume from a SAN. The default location is // cluster storage.
Oh, so you're talking about like a mount point, it sounds like. Yeah, you absolutely can monitor those in several different ways. When it comes to clusters, though, it can be a little bit tricky. You want to make sure to target the virtual IP for those shared resources. So it doesn't matter if you're sharing storage or the shared service, etc. You'll want to make sure when you're adding that monitoring to What's Up Gold, you associate it to the virtual IP for that cluster, so to speak. Whereas on the nodes themselves, you would monitor the local resources, the local C drive, for example, on each one of those, or the local cluster service on each one, etc. So that's the key part is What's Up Gold will not do that for you automatically. You need to know that cluster exists, and you need to know the cluster IP address, etc.
Excellent, thank you. This one might be a bit more detailed as well. How do I monitor IOPS and disk latency on my physical servers?
So that's a it depends question. So, and when I say it depends, it really comes down to operating system. So for Windows, you could simply just use WMI counters under settings, libraries, monitors. Once again, this would be a performance monitor, and this would be a WMI monitor. And I can probably select it from the list live here. So this, we would want physical disk. We don't care about logical disk. Here it is, physical disk. And you see I can target a specific disk, and then I have all my different counters. So you can collect any of the information necessary when it comes to data operations. Now, the catch being, I said it depends, right? Because what about Linux, Unix operating systems? Well, there are object IDs for looking at that. So the difference being is it would be through snmp data as opposed to through WMI data. For anyone not familiar, there is, I'm going to put this on the screen real quick. There is an object ID specifically for disk IO information in Linux. And I'm fairly positive every flavor of Linux, if you enable the snmp service, you will have this UC Davis MIB. And that's where a lot of different Linux related performance values are stored.
Got it. How can I capture network delays or contention on my firewall interfaces?
That one is a little bit tricky, but it is doable. So what a lot of people miss is we actually have a kind of latency variation type of monitor. We call it the ping interarrival jitter monitor. You need to create this and then just give it the information. So that way, if there is deviation from what you're expecting, you're able to easily get alerted about that type of thing. Now, in terms of contention, that really comes down to probably traffic analysis. So with core What's Up Gold, you can see that utilization, how utilized it is, but that's not going to tell you what is utilizing the data. To get to that level of detail, you're going to need traffic analysis or greater, we'll say. So with that traffic analysis, I can specifically see, okay, what is consuming the bandwidth on a certain interface, right? So I can say, well, I just care about this interface, for example, and then all my reports update to show me, all right, what's using the bandwidth there? And it's going to give you that information to, I always like to tell this story. I was setting up What's Up Gold for a customer, and they were having some severe network slowness issues, and they started blaming What's Up Gold. And I said, there's no way. Let's get a traffic analysis trial set up, and we'll figure out what's going on. So we did. We went and got the trial, and lo and behold, we found the problem. They had a backup running during the day. They were able to go kill the backup, and everything went back to normal. But having this level of information obviously has other use cases outside of just saying, well, it's slow right now. For example, you could use it for justifying bandwidth increases for your company, so to speak. I think I went above and beyond on that one. Hopefully,
Definitely, definitely. Here's another one that just came in while we're here. Is it possible to do a bulk change for the device role or OS under device properties?
Not in bulk right now. However, that is something we are looking into for a future release. I would encourage whoever asked that to join our customer validation program. You can get there by going to whatsupgold.com/CVP, and I can potentially share some more information for you there.
Excellent. What is the best practice for polling intervals?
So what I generally recommend is stick with the default unless you have a reason not to. So in terms of a reason not to, you might be, maybe you're trying to run an expensive script, so to speak, a very complex script. Maybe you don't want to run that every 60 seconds. You would extend that out further. But it's, once again, an it depends scenario. If you have a requirement to pull things in a certain frequency, you absolutely have the ability to come into your device properties and edit that polling interval. And this will apply to all monitors that are using that default polling interval on the device. In addition to that, on individual monitors, you can override that value and say, no, I want to pull this monitor every 2 minutes instead. But in general, you don't really need to worry about adjusting those polling intervals unless you have some specific requirement to do so.
Got it. Kind of similar, what is the best practice on how many times should a poll fail before triggering an alert?
I sort of answered this earlier. I recommend
Yeah.
at least twice. So that's, down at least 2 minutes, and our default every 60-second polling interval. Now, once again, it depends though. I've seen people that say, well, I'm okay with it being down 5 minutes before the first alert. And what I would suggest is stick to what works for you and your environment. Staying within your requirements that your company puts forward for you. We'll put it that way. So I've seen some instances where they don't alert at all. They'll still monitor the device, and they'll come look in the morning and do it that way. So it really depends on your scenario. But in general, you want to make sure whatever monitor you're learning about has failed at least twice. So that way it's not just a one-off, it failed twice in a row, and that means it might need your attention, right? All right.
Moving on, we've got, not sure how clear this one's going to be, but let me see if I can interpret it. Is it possible to do a map with the status of a group of devices and also on the same map, also a counter about the number of devices in a good state and the number of devices not in a good state?
Not necessarily directly within the map. So the map is very highly customizable. So I actually just pulled one up here. Let's take a quick peek. So I pulled up my application map here, and you see I just put a background image and put the specific groups, and I could see status. Catch being, you don't see any counters here, and there's no way to pull in that information because I can't add like HTML or anything to this to customize it further. However, I love that as a product idea. For those not familiar, we do have an ideation portal that we're looking at on a daily basis. If you have suggestions for features such as that one, I would highly encourage you get active out on our ideation portal. Now, in terms of map customizability, you have a lot of different options. So you see on these ones, I just did, so these are just device groups I'm showing, right? But what about if I want to do something with devices? Let's see if I have another one here. Oh, I do. So on this one, I put like, a background image, and then I'm showing, different groups on there, and then drill down from there as well. So I can drill down and see, oh, here's the rest of these. In addition to this, you can kind of build meaningful application maps, so to speak. And people always get confused when I say that, like, what do you mean an application map? So for example, let's see what I have in my What's Up Gold system here. So on my What's Up Gold server, if I go on my device properties, I see that I have various other monitors, right? So the map isn't limited to showing just those interface monitors. You can show the status of any monitor. I'm just going to draw a box here so I could connect these two things. So I hold Control and click the other one, and then I'm going to add a custom link. And you'll notice I can put any monitor here. So that's how you can build an application map. Maybe you want to say, you have a multi-tiered application that depends on SQL Server. Well, you can show the status of that SQL server right within your map as well. So just keep in mind, you're not limited when it comes to the type of monitors you can show on the map, as well as showing multiple things going to a specific system. Hopefully, I answered that to your liking.
Well, actually, something that might be somewhat similar while we're looking at pointing at external resources, do we have a link to a guide on how to set up SMS alerts?
Oh, sure. Well, the best resource really is on the docs.ipswitch.com. So on docs.ipswitch.com, the very first thing you'll see is the What's Up Gold help guide. So not only is there a help guide, there's also some very detailed information in various other guides. Aside from that, I always point out that you can get more information about this type of stuff directly within the product. So I'm in my actions and policies library. You'll notice this little question mark in the top right. That's almost on every dialog within What's Up Gold. Simply by clicking that, it's context sensitive. So it's now going to bring me to information about alerts and actions and get more details there. Now, long story short, you have a couple different options when it comes to SMS. You could use the email action by using the provider's phone number, your 10-digit phone number at provider.com. For example, Verizon's like at vtext.com, and you could do it that way. And that's how most people end up doing it. What I suggest is if you are emailing about anything related to your network, make sure you actually have that connection to the email server, right? So you wouldn't use the email action to alert about your email server going down. So make sure you accommodate for that type of situation. That's where your SMS action, SMS direct come in for dial-up or GSM modems. All right. Hopefully that's enough detail, but I can get more granular if need be. Just ask more questions in the chat there.
I think we're going to wrap it up with this one, but it's very open-ended, so feel free to take as much time as you need. What are the top 10 best practices for using What's Up Gold?
10, oh my goodness. Okay, I'll try and list as many as possible. And I already discussed these as we were going to, a lot of them. The very first thing that I see a lot of people get tripped up on is, well, after discovery, what do I do? Well, it's pretty simple. You just got to tell What's Up Gold what you want to monitor. So on your Discover tab, you simply select what you want to monitor and then say Start Update Monitoring and drop those into a group. Now, it sounds straightforward, right? But there's going to be situations where there's something you don't care about. Try to avoid monitoring the things you don't care about or don't need to know about, because it's going to end up just being noise and it's going to be more difficult for you. So once you are monitoring those devices, remember I said keeping the base monitors is all well and good. That's a great starting point. Phase 2 after that is identifying, all right, what's critical to the environment? If you don't already have this defined, that's where you should even start. What's critical to the environment in terms of, if this system or service is unavailable, are people going to be unable to work? If the answer is ever yes, more than likely you want to make sure to monitor that in depth. And same thing goes for kind of revenue generating type things, maybe a payment system, right? If it's down, the company's losing money. So anything that can lose money or people are unable to complete their work, you want to make sure you're monitoring that more in depth. And when I say in depth, you don't want to go overboard. So like on Windows servers, you would look at, probably just Windows services, are they running or not running? Maybe look at the event logs a little bit more to look for errors, etc. But in general, I think another best practice I would say is the alerting when it comes to waiting for at least 2 failures. That's a mistake I see a lot of people make, and you never want to alert immediately when something is down on that first poll cycle. You want to wait at least 2 polling cycles before you alert on pretty much any monitor. Obviously, once again, there are exceptions, but that's the general rule. Now, the other best practice is, well, make sure you have credentials. WhatsUp Gold is 100% agentless. Well, that means we can do some monitoring of devices without credentials, but that would be limited to ping and port checks. If you want to do any of the advanced capabilities WhatsUp Gold offers, you need to make sure to have the proper credentials assigned to your device. Now, what's really good is, well, you just have to add them to the library and then run your discovery process, and those credentials will be automatically assigned to those devices as need be. In fact, you can actually see if your device is perhaps responding to something it shouldn't be. So it actually keeps track of any credentials you've ever used against that device and whether they succeeded or failed. Let's see, what was another one? Oh, another good one is use your dashboards to your advantage. So keep in mind that these dashboards are 100% customizable. I see a lot of environments I've been in, people just have the base set of dashboards, which they're good, but at the same time, there's going to be things specific to your environment that you want to see, at the forefront and things you care about. These can be filtered to specific groups. They can also be pointed at specific devices, etc. A good example is I always make one called something like problem areas, trying to get an overview. So I'll make a dashboard like this. Okay. And then I'll add down active monitors. To me, when I ran my environment and when I was a customer, this was the most important thing that I wanted to see. Are there any monitors down? And if so, well, this needs my attention. I need to go address it. But at the same time, you could kind of use that as a running list. Remember what I said earlier? Well, if you don't care about it, don't monitor it. So I might go on this list and say, oh, well, I don't care about this specific device. I'm going to stop monitoring this. Another very good one is the discovery process itself. So under discover and then save scan settings, you're going to see there's a built-in scan called scheduled refresh on monitored devices. I recommend running this every 24 hours. The specific reason being, it automatically updates your devices. You see it says allowed monitored devices. So I'm actually pointing this at a group of, the top level. So I'm rescanning all of my devices periodically. Why that's important is the inventory data. So the topology mapping, in addition, the inventory data, that data only gets updated when the discovery runs against that device. So let's pull up, let's see, SQ, I think it was this one, this Nexus device. And then on the inventory tab, a lot of people miss that this inventory tab even exists, but there is a lot of useful information out here. So for example, maybe I want to see, which ports in which VLAN. The bridge ports can show you that. Or maybe I need to see just a list of all of the interfaces and get the MAC address, etc. But all of this data in the inventory section depends on that discovery process running. So if it doesn't run, that means this data can end up being stale. So that scheduled discovery for scheduled refresh of monitored devices, what's called, is very important to run periodically. Now, let's say you don't want to do that for whatever reason, and you want to make sure the data is updated before looking. You could always right-click a device, and you see either refresh device details or rescan device. Either one will update that inventory data as well. I think that's it for best practices off the top of my head, though. I don't think I quite got to 10.
I was going to say that was excellent, very comprehensive. And honestly, we're running up against the end of our time here. So first of all, and I have to say, thank you everyone who's attended, and thank you, Jason. I will just say I've been noticing the numbers for this for attendees for this presentation, and I don't think we've had anyone leave since you started. So this audience is definitely fascinated and on the hook. Um, we're going to have to defer at this point simply because we're running out of time. We really do want to be respectful of your time. As fascinating as this is, we don't want to drag out the rest of your day into this, but we have a few questions we haven't gotten to. We will respond to you guys all individually, and based on this response, we may be planning a Ask the WUG Ninja webinar again in the not too distant future. And by the way, if your questions are urgent, you don't need to wait for us to set up an expert on a hot seat for you. We do have an entire online support system and a helpline that's more than happy to answer your questions. You can pick up the phone. You can find that at under the support link on any of the progress pages, and they'll be more than happy to help you out. So you don't need to wait for us. If you've got a question, feel free to call and ask. That's exactly what your maintenance agreement is paying for. And I will say that we do not mind at all helping out. Unlike some of our competitors, we do offer support, and we do want to keep you guys happy. It's not a, we'll try to get back to you within 24 hours by email sort of thing. So with all that said, thank you everyone. Yeah, I've already gotten a couple of people saying, yes, please do another one of these. So bear in mind, Jason, we're gonna drag you back in for this as soon as we can coordinate it. But in the
Okay.
meantime, I'm gonna say thanks everyone. We really appreciate your questions. We really appreciate you coming by. If there are other questions that didn't occur to you, again, feel free to submit them. There's a big ask or contact us link on every single one of our web pages. So feel free to submit those and we will get back to you. Otherwise, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk with you soon.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.